Welcome to the latest edition of 42 Stories Anthology Presents. We have another interview, this time with one of our special guest judges, April. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In front of you, I'm showing you one of the drafts of the cover. The authors had picked this from votes. What's your first impression of it?
I love it. I love that 42's everywhere.
Oh,
It's a fun collage of images. Yeah, you could study that one for a while.
happy to hear that. Thanks. And this is also the logo where represent your name. So hopefully I don't slaughter your name. Davila, right?
Dávila, Dávila.
Dávila. You said that before we started recording too. Dávila. Yeah. Kind of like okay, I get the intonation now. Dávila. Yeah.
There's usually an accent over the first A in Dávila, but it's often forgotten. Yes, but Dávila is how you
I
pronounce
think
it.
it's that way in the book at least. It's just when I was typing this 5 minutes ago, I didn't go go, wait a second, I need to put that.
Yeah.
Kind of wings it. All right. Yeah, the accent would actually help. What's your last name come from?
So it's my husband's name. His family is from Ecuador and way back from Spain, the town of Avila. So they were de Avila for a long time, and then over the years it got shortened to Davila.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So from Avila to Davila. Makes sense. Because language is always evolving and all.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. So you were the special guest judge for the Sword and Sorcery chapter. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I was really impressed by your writing, and then we got you as a judge, so it was great. And the authors were happy.
Oh, it was really fun to do it. The why is that I love fantasy. I haven't written any fantasy myself yet, but I read a lot of it. I'm a big fan. And when you reached out, I just thought like that would be the one I'd have the most fun reading the submissions for. So that's why I chose it.
Yeah, when I was reading 142 Ostriches, I was thinking, when's the fantasy going to start? But it was kind of realistic, but still really enjoyable. I'm used to more creative stuff. Like I mean like fantasy. When I say more
Yeah.
creative, your story is
Yeah.
very creative, but your story is more like real life.
It
Uh,
is real life. I really like stories that kind of edge up against um fantasy. So like setting it on an ostrich farm. There were even versions of where like the ostriches would like be a little more human-like. I ended up paring it back a little bit, but I like stories that kind of edge up against things like that. So yeah, I'm a fan of fantasy. I'm hoping to maybe write one someday. We'll see how that goes.
well, I'm glad that you didn't personify the ostriches and you kept them like animals because I think it
Yeah,
made them more relatable in a way.
I
That
think it
makes
was the
sense.
right choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it would have been all about like, well, why are they, I don't know, talking or dancing or whatever it would have been. That would have been the whole topic. And the story was really more about the family than the birds.
Yeah, it was also I know that it's yours, but I felt there was a sense of culture there of like culture of raising animals that some people don't know. And
Yeah,
and you brought a part of you into the story.
yeah. Thank you.
And on that note, I'm going to get into your bio. So let's see. Your debut novel was 142 Ostriches, which I mentioned. It won the Willa Award for women writing. Yeah, women writing the West.
Yes.
You co-founded the online writing community. Okay, and Writer's Digest listed you. Oh, it listed your website, aprildavila.com, as as one of the best 101 websites for writers. Okay. Did I say your last name right that time?
Almost.
Oh,
Close. Close enough.
I feel like it's revenge on me because no one says my name right. No, I can't say yours. I'm going to listen to the recording of this after we finish and then memorize it. And then
It's
we'll never
fine.
talk again and I'll be able to say your name perfectly. So but From my understanding, you said in that Writer's Digest listed your website as one of the best. That's great.
Yeah, that was an
Congratulations.
honor. And then also like when you make the list, they then ask you if you want to present at their writing conference, which was a real honor as well. I got to go to the Writer's Digest novel writing conference as a presenter. And I don't know, they do good work. I like Writer's Digest.
Okay. So was it a far trip for you?
No, they do the novel writing conference in Pasadena, so I'm in Los Angeles, so very close. They also have one in New York, and in fact, I think they're letting go of the Pasadena one and focusing on the New York one post-pandemic. I think conferences are having a hard time kind of getting back on their feet, and so they're focusing just on the New York one. So that would be a longer trip. We'll see. I don't know if I'll go out for that one or not.
Oh, I'm surprised they're not trying something Zoom wise because of the
Yeah,
pandemic there.
I think they are offering a component of that, but there's something really nice about being in person. I like going in person.
Yeah, I agree with you. But at the same time, just last night I was interviewing someone in Norway, and that'd be impossible
Yeah,
without
yeah.
us. Yeah, so there's good and bad, and I'm teaching students all over the world when an online class too. So
Wow.
there are perks. Yeah,
There are perks for sure.
yeah.
Yes.
But there's something to be said for face to face in real life. You're right too.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, you said you're located in Los Angeles?
Yeah, actually we've moved from Los Angeles up into like near closer to the Pasadena area. We're in a small town called La Cañada. It's a suburb. It's really lovely.
I'll take a memo of that because I want to visit California sometime with my fiance and show
Ah.
her not Disney, but anything else because I already went to Disney.
There's a lot to see. There's a lot to see. I love California. I grew up in Northern California. We moved to Southern California about 17 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever lived anywhere else?
For short periods, I lived in the Caribbean for 9 months. I lived in the South Pacific for 2 summers. My dad was working on an army base there, so we went out for the summers. I lived in Seattle for almost a year. I counted when I left, it was 51 weeks, so I didn't quite make it to a year. But yeah, that's oh, and then I lived in Ecuador for 4 months, but like short stints, mostly California.
Oh. Another one of the judges who's been a friend of mine for many, many years, Darlene. She was originally from there, and then she moved to Houston, and she's been
Uh,
writing ever since. But yeah, she's. I recommend looking her up if you're into that. That
yeah.
the location because her stories sometimes take place there. Sometimes she just takes her culture and puts it in the stories.
Cool.
Compost, if you ever want to look her up when the book comes out.
I will. Yeah, I intend to dig into all of it when the book comes out. I can't wait to
Great.
see.
By the way, let's talk about your writing. Where is your writing space?
I have a little home office. If anyone's watching the video, this is it. I have a bookshelf behind me that my daughter color coded during COVID. She was very bored. And so she made this lovely color coding and I just have come to really like it. So this is my space.
Okay. For a minute, I actually thought it was kind of a background image, but yeah, that's a real it's a real bookshelf.
Background, yeah, and it gets actually messy sometimes. I have to move things. Sometimes I scoot things off to the side for a Zoom interview because it gets a little messy.
Yeah, that's great. And you said she color coded the books?
Yeah, she just, we had a lot of time and she's like, "Can I color code your bookshelf?" And I said, I told her she could do the middle because these are all my fiction books, but like these shelves are organized by topic. So she like if you could see a little closer, you'd say they're actually color coded by shelf, but I didn't let her do like I don't know, there was like a whole discussion, but she did a lovely job.
Yeah. So your focus is more more not on fiction, but on what when you read?
No, I'm definitely focused on fiction, but like I'm also a mindfulness teacher. So like the top
Oh,
shelf here is all my mindfulness books, and then these are all my writing books, and then these are all the books that are like research for the book I'm working on. These are books published by people that I know and love. Like that's how I organize my bookshelf in my head. So I couldn't have her organize everything into color coding or I'd never find anything again.
okay. I was kind of relating in my brain because I might start teaching a neuroscience sort of thing. Speaking of mindfulness, where there's a lot of brain mapping.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's the part of mindfulness that I'm most excited about is the neuroscience part of it and the way that we can learn to become more aware of our brains and slow down our reactions to things, just neuroscientifically speaking. It's fascinating to me.
Well, advice on that that I rarely do and should is that I've read that waiting 3 seconds between when people say things
Ah,
that it helps, but sometimes my brain doesn't let me do it. But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's
no,
what I'm
that's
doing.
hard to do. Yeah.
Are there any books you'd recommend on neuroscience?
Ah, yeah. Oh my gosh. There's one by this guy. Where is it?
Because I want to tell my students mostly, and I think some
Yeah.
viewers might be interested.
Yeah, I'd have to go through my shelf because I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. There's a guy out of UCLA who's doing some very interesting work. He's a neuroscientist and he started t talking about being more aware of your brain and only then like realized that he was basically talking about like mindfulness, and he ended up teaming up with some uh like Jack Cornfield, people who are traditionally just mindfulness teachers, and they're doing some very interesting work together. I'll send you a list. I
Yeah.
it's very early here in Los Angeles, so my brain is not fully functioning yet.
Oh yeah, I forget about the time zone. It's 11:30 almost here in Japan PM. And
Yeah,
it's what, 2 hours back minus 12, so 14 hours back for you?
7:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah, you're way earlier than I was thinking.
Yeah.
7:30. Yeah. But one book that I'm going to be teaching is this. It's called Active English. They have a lot of map stuff. It's
Oh,
by
cool.
this Jim, I think Kunsen. I can't say it right. It's Knudsen.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a pretty good book. It has topics like mindfulness, and yeah, so it's pretty cool that you mentioned that.
Ah,
So that's the end of the slideshow. I'd like to get to some questions, some straight talk, I guess. I don't know
yeah.
what to call it. 'Cause usually I do like a more of a slideshow, but I like going out of the norm. Tell me some of your icebreaker questions, okay? So tell me some of
Okay.
your favorite foods to get your writer brain pumping.
Oh, like foods I eat at my desk.
Yeah.
Um, Dark chocolate, candy ginger, ginger snaps. Uh, yeah, that's coffee, of course. Coffee. Yeah.
That's great. Coffee for me too. It's just I need to stay away from it after 5 or I'm so hyper.
Ah.
But when you want to relax and get away from the caffeine, what do you do to relax?
Oh, what do I do to relax? I mean, I love reading books. Like when I am done with what I look forward to at the end of the day is like I get to go lay down in my bed and read whatever book is on the side of my table there. Um, Outside of like anything writing or reading related, I like plants. I don't know. I have my garden is kind of not great this year, but like I have a lot of indoor plants and um, I like going on hikes. I have two dogs, and we live because we're north of LA. We're kind of up in the foothills of the San Gabriels, and it's nice to get out for hikes
Uh,
when
oh,
it's not
really?
hot, which is not often these days.
In 2022, I was in California and I tried to go to the Hollywood sign kind of
Uh,
hiking area, but it was
yeah,
so packed with cars, it was impossible.
there's that. Yeah, because it's like that's a real touristy kind of hike, and it's fun. It's a fun hike to do to like because and you go straight up the hill and behind the sign, and it's really fun to stand behind the sign. But yeah, there's no official parking lot, so you're just parking in neighborhoods, and if you go when it's busy, it is really hard to find parking. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. If you ever make it to Japan, there's a million hiking spots. And I've been hiking here for 10 years. And one summer I went every week, at least once. And
Nice.
it was a different hiking trail every week for
Wow.
2 months because there's so many here. And it's just
That's so
amazing.
fun.
But, yeah, I highly recommend Japan for hikers.
I would love to visit Japan. It's on the list for sure.
Great. So I was thinking about your voice in your book, 142 Ostriches, and it kind of seemed like you were writing to someone at some points.
Hmm.
So that made me wonder, who do you write to when you're at the computer or wherever you are writing?
I It's not really intentional, but if I stop and really think about who I'm writing to, it's really my husband, because he's my creative partner. He's also creative. He's a screenwriter, and we're always each other's first read. And so, I didn't even realize I was doing that, but as I have grown as a writer, I think that when I'm picturing who's going to be reading it or who I'm writing to, he's the first one who reads everything. So it's him.
Hmm. I feel like lately I've been writing to my fiance, so I could totally relate again.
Yeah.
And I'm always asking her to read stuff after I write it and say, "What do you think of this?" She's
What do you
getting
think of
tired of
this?
it.
That's the thing. Like I always worry he's going to get tired of reading my revisions. And sometimes like right now I'm working on a chapter that I've really been struggling with, and he's maybe read it like 7 times now, this one little section, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to ask you to read it again. But he's a very good sport. He keeps reading.
Yeah, yeah. So does she. She keeps reading, even though she says she gives me hell, but she likes it. You mentioned something though that made me think of another question.
Yeah.
You said 7 drafts. What's the most drafts you've written?
Oh, well, my first book, I think it came in at like 14 drafts. It was a lot. Because I didn't know what I was doing. It took me a long time to figure out the story and then get it to look like I wanted it to look. So when I say like 7 drafts, I'm talking about 7 drafts on like a page.
Hmm.
Like sometimes there's a little section that I get stuck on and I have to rewrite it a bunch of times. But generally speaking, like my writing process is getting a lot more streamlined and I don't do that many drafts anymore. The book that has this one page that's plaguing me, I think I did 4 drafts all in.
Of the one page or the book?
4 drafts of the whole book.
Hmm.
And now there's just this one scene. It's in the beginning. I really want it to land like how I'm imagining it will land, and it's just not quite there yet. So yeah, I've done more passes at it. But the book as a whole has done a lot fewer drafts than I did on my first book because I just learned a lot while I was writing that first book.
Oh, okay. So the first book, was it ever published?
That's 142 Ostriches is the first
Oh,
one.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying like your debut novel.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not like your first book that you ever wrote.
Well, the first draft of 142 Ostriches was the first book I ever wrote. It was a totally different book. It evolved a lot as I did 14 different drafts on it. Um,
At least it
and
wasn't
improved
142.
dramatic. It took a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. But oh, I should have waited to say that. I said at least it wasn't 142 drafts, but you probably get that.
Oh, yeah, thank goodness. I'd
Yeah.
still be working on it.
Yeah, so that's a great success story for your first book. I hope that you're telling a lot of writers about that to motivate them.
I host a webinar a few times a year called How to Turn Your Half-Finished Novel into a Completed Manuscript, where I basically talk about like the things that I learned in writing that first book so that now my books don't take quite so long.
Is anyone invited to join?
And anyone is invited to join. You can visit my website. I only offer it a few times a year, but if you don't catch it, get on my newsletter, and I always send out an update when it's happening.
Hmm. Well, if viewers don't try, I will at least once after my dissertation because I have
Ah, nice.
one book. It won like a manuscript of the year award
Oh,
and
wow.
like a logline award at an agents and editors conference. And then I submitted it to 135 agents and they all rejected it.
Mm,
So
that happens. It
yeah,
happens.
and now
Yeah.
it's been on like a virtual shelf for years. I don't mean to complain about my book, but yeah,
Oh,
what you're
well, I
describing
mean,
it sounds like.
I'm also a writing coach. If you ever want me to like take a pass at it and give you a set of notes, I'd be happy to.
Well, if I don't have time to do it, I hope someone else does because you really do know your stuff. I loved your book and
Thank
definitely a
you.
fan. So
Thank
I
you.
think people should listen to what you have to say.
Thank
Um, but on that note, tell me about your story process, not
The
progress.
process, like okay, I tend to write through a draft. So, and outlining is hit or miss. Like I didn't outline the first book and it took me a long time. I outlined the second book And then I swore, oh my gosh, I'll never write another book without outlining. It was so much easier. And then I went and like had this idea and just started writing. And like now I've got a third book going with no outline. So I don't outlines, no consistency. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But the one thing that's consistent is I like to write through a whole draft and then I print it out, stick it in a drawer for a month, work on something else, and then read it through and do another pass. Mindfulness is a big part of my like day-to-day process. I start every writing session with a 10-minute meditation, and that it has been such a game changer for me. I mean, I used to like wait for inspiration, right? Or like hope that I could drop into that wonderful state of flow. But what I found is like integrating meditation into my writing routine, I get to be in that state of flow every time. Like I sit down, meditate, I can pretty much, I have to set a timer to stop myself when I have other things to do because I could just write and write and write.
Mm. I'm kind of laughing here because my fiance was telling me that if I wanted to improve for my dissertation, it's due very soon. She said I needed to sit back and meditate, and I keep not doing it. And you're here
It's,
saying, and I meditate. I'm like two people saying it. It must be true.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's it's kind of a game changer. It's the crux of how I work with my clients when I work like day to day with writing clients. Is meditation's a big part of it. In fact, my first nonfiction book I'm just finishing up now is it's called Scribbling Buddha. 6 ways mindfulness can help you write more, suffer less.
I don't.
So yeah, it's a big part of my writing process.
Hmm. Yeah. Is there any music when you meditate?
No, I can't do music, even like classical. Like I do sometimes. I've gotten recently into on YouTube, you can find those like hertz. They're like certain frequency sounds that you can just
Yeah.
play.
Or
Like
noise?
that's the only thing I can have in my ears and be able to focus it on. My husband, I mean, thankfully our house is like U-shaped and his office is on the other side, thankfully, because he's like, I mean, he's a drummer. He's got music like louder the better. Like cannot work anywhere near him. I need quiet, like a lot of quiet.
Well, in the past, a lot of people like to have music and things when they wrote, but recent studies are saying that it's putting your focus elsewhere too. Like there's no multitasking. There's
Yeah,
saying that there's just focusing less on one thing and another. And so
yeah,
there's something
that's
to what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah.
And then that makes people question, well, listening to music and driving, are you paying attention to the road?
Mm,
So other
yeah.
things come into play.
I do love to listen to music while I'm driving. That's where I do a lot of driving here in LA, and that's like music is keeps it fun.
You're kind of forced to. What happens when you're suddenly inspired to write while driving? What do you do?
Oh, I've got my phone all set up to be like, hey, write this down for me. Yeah. No, I lean into technology. I appreciate things like voice memos or, send myself a text with a story idea or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I wanted to ask you about the chapter you were the guest judge for.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about the writers or a message to them? It doesn't have to be 42 words.
Thank you. Like on the spot, 42 words. I just loved the creativity. That's why I chose the fantasy. Anyway, I love the creativity that goes into fantasy writing and the writers did not disappoint. The things that people even attempted to do in 42 words was impressive. And some of them I was a little more successful than others, but like I appreciate the effort on every one. They really like they brought their A game. It was fun.
Oh, well, that's great. I hope that they get that message and hear it, and that they keep writing even after this. A lot of them are so happy that it's coming out. But
Yeah.
before I forget to mention it, I want somebody to check out your book, and especially the reviews, because they'll see that I was the 142nd review.
Ah,
Which,
that's fun.
yeah, I went, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, 42's everywhere.
Yeah, but that was 142, and your book is
Right.
142 ostriches. Why
Yeah.
142?
So I It's a tough question. Like people ask me that a lot when it came out because it seems like it should have some like deeper meaning. But really, like I just did the math on about how many ostriches this farm would need to like pay their bills, and it was about 150, and 150 seemed like too round a number, so I just made it 140. I don't know. I don't have a good answer on that one.
That's a
Is
pretty
that
good
how many
answer.
there were? It's all fictional.
Well, I mean, I think saying the number is usually about 150 and you didn't want a solid number, so you went down a bit. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely chatting.
Yeah, it was lovely chatting with you too. Okay. So thank you for your time then.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.